So this is lesson 4. This is creating form using value. And in this lesson, we're mostly going to talk about a painting that I've already created that you're going to be copying. Now, if you were doing it without any lights in your room like I have here, and you set up a still life, you'd be setting up a still life with a sphere and a cylinder, and you'd have one light coming from one direction. So let's talk about what that would look like. You're going to have a light that starts here and comes across your painting. And so because of that, you're going to have light areas and dark areas. And you're going to have highlights and you're going to have shadows. Some of the interesting things about that is where you think it would be, like right at the edge, is not necessarily so. So the highlights on your piece is actually slightly inside the edge of your sphere and your cylinder. You're going to start with a value that's slightly darker than your lightest lights. And you're going to end with a value that is lighter than your darkest darks. So your darkest darks come in slightly before the end of your object, here and here. So you're going to have your highlights, your midtones, your darkest darks, and then you're going to have a slightly lighter dark. So you're going to have your highlights, your midtones, your darkest dark, and then underneath here is what is called a reflective light. A reflective light is not going to be as light as a highlight, but compared to everything around it, it is going to look very light, and that is what actually gives you the feeling of 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional surface. The other type of things I'd like to talk about are cast shadows. Cast shadows are the shadows that appear when a light hits something and then the dark side has a shadow cast across it. The cast shadow starts out very dark, but then gets diffused as it moves farther away from the object. So your cast shadow starts out dark and then gets lighter and more diffused. When I say more diffused, I mean it blends into the colors around it or the values around it. We're going to start thinking about the light hitting across our objects, and we're going to define the objects with shadows and cast shadows. Let's get started.